In this video, I'm going to give you an explanation of the proposed house value tax. Now, this is the latest crazy idea to come out from the Labour government, who have a real problem. There is a massive deficit and the government need more tax income, but they said in their manifesto they're not going to increase income tax. They're not going to change national insurance. They did it for companies, but not for individuals. And they're not going to do capital gains tax any further. So this is a real problem because they need some money. And obviously, Labour Party, Labour government, they want to tax wealthy people. So this is something that's being suggested by the Treasury to potentially replace stamp duty and also replace local council tax. Now, what they're suggesting is that properties that are valued over £500,000. You might think, well, that doesn't affect many people. It's about a fifth of the properties out there. And certainly if you live in London or the southeast, you're more likely to be affected by this than if you're maybe living up north. In London, according to a latest research from Halifax, the average house price is something like £539,000. So the average person in London is going to be affected by this. And what they're talking about, the big change is if you sell a property, they want to charge a tax on the sale for the amount over 500,000. If it's over £1 million, there'll be even more. And they want to charge this tax instead of stamp duty. So let me first explain a little bit about exactly what is stamp duty, or SDLT, stamp duty land tax, which is the full name. So this is the tax that you pay whenever you buy a property, depending on the value of that property. Now, this was first introduced in 1694. It's one of the oldest taxes, and this definitely has an effect on the property market. Now, the amount of tax you pay varies. The more valuable the property, the more tax you pay. And there are certain thresholds under which you don't have to pay stamp duty. Now, this has been used as a tool to stimulate the property market. We saw this during the COVID pandemic when everyone was worried about property market crashes, and the government stepped in to increase the threshold at which you start to pay stamp duty, which made it more affordable for people to buy properties. And that's one of the reasons there was a bit of a boom in property prices, which was very unexpected during the COVID years. Now, that's obviously come back down. They've taken the thresholds back. And so the more expensive a property, the more stamp duty you pay. Now, if you're buying a first home, you'll pay a sliding scale. If you are a property investor or buying a second home, you pay an extra 5% stamp duty. Now, it was increased to 5% in the last budget by Rachel Reeves, and it was an increase from 3% up to 5%. It was actually the Conservative government who introduced in 2016 this extra 3% charge for property investors, and Labour have now increased that up to 5%. Now, that has definitely slowed the property market. There are a number of reasons why the property market is very slow at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty. People are worried about the renters' rights bills. People are waiting for interest rates to maybe come down further. And also, I think many investors are trying to get their head around and get used to this extra 5% stamp duty. If someone's a foreign investor, they pay an extra 2% on top of that. So it's 7% charge in addition to the sliding scale that you pay. Now, the key point here is it's normally the buyers who pay the stamp duty. However, this new proposal by the Treasury that the Labour government are suggesting is actually the seller is going to pay this tax. Now, what's that going to mean? Well, first of all, I think most sellers will probably just increase the amount they want to get from the sale of the property to cover the extra tax. And actually, if you were buying an expensive property and you've heard this might happen, they might well reduce the amount of stamp duty you're going to pay, I think this might completely kill the higher value property market. Think about it. I've been looking at a block of flats in Birmingham to buy. It's an investment. And the stamp duty I would pay on that will be £138,000. It's £138,000 for nothing, as far as I'm concerned. It's just money to the government for doing absolutely nothing just because I'm buying a valuable property. Well, actually, maybe I don't want to buy that property anymore, because if I wait a few years, and by the way, it always takes a bit of time for these policies to come in and be implemented, but the thoughts are this could be implemented during this term with the Labour government. I might think, you know what, maybe I don't want to buy any valuable property, and this could completely kill the higher value market. So this one thing could cause a property market crash starting at the top of the market, because nobody wants to buy the expensive properties if they could wait a few years and maybe pay no stamp duty if this comes in. The other impact this could have on the property market is, imagine you do have a valuable property and they change it so that instead of the buyer paying the stamp duty, the seller has to pay the stamp duty. I think a lot of people may decide not to sell properties. They might just decide to pass that property down through the generations. And maybe people, rather than going to live in their own home somewhere, they might start living with their parents. You might have more people living in the same home. I think this is probably a very likely trend, because it's getting harder and harder for first-time buyers to buy properties and get onto the property market. Now, you could argue that actually, if you are removing stamp duty, this helps first-time buyers. But remember, this extra tax is only going to be on properties over £500,000 anyway. So a lot of cheaper properties are not going to be affected by this. So what are the other impacts this could have on the property market? Now, as well as these proposed stamp duty changes, they're talking about potentially scrapping the traditional council tax method, which, by the way, is based on values from 1991. So maybe it's a bit of an unfair system anyway, and actually replacing it by a national tax that is charged on the value of property over £500,000. And they're talking about an annual fee of 0.54% for properties between 500 and a million, and then over a million, it would be 0.81%. Not on the whole property value, but on the value over £1 million. What that means is that more expensive properties would have to pay this annual property tax, and people who lived in cheaper properties would not have to pay at all. Now, you might say that's fair because rich people are paying more, supporting other people. But is it really fair? Do the people in the bigger houses get better services, basic amenities? I mean, I live in Birmingham and my bins have not been collected for 6 months. 6 months! Seriously, I'm having to pay people to take the rubbish away separately, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm not very happy about paying council tax at the moment, but I think I'd be even less likely to pay a larger contribution knowing that other people who are in cheaper houses are paying nothing at all. Now, this is one of the crazy ideas, and I don't quite understand what the rationale is behind this. But this is something that is being talked about at the moment. So this is just another example of the Labour government who are desperate. They have got their back against the wall and they are clutching at all sorts of straws to try and bring in more tax revenue. So who knows exactly what this is going to do? Obviously, the Labour Party won the general election back in July 2024 and became the government with this landslide election. But as I've said on this YouTube channel previously, I was really shocked after the general election in July 2024, when all the stats came out, to see that Keir Starmer's Labour government, which won this landslide victory, had actually got less votes than Jeremy Corbyn's attempt the previous time, which was completely obliterated by the Conservative Party. So this suggests that far from everyone voting for Labour, the reason Labour won the general election is because everyone decided not to vote for the Conservatives. And to be honest, I think the Conservatives probably deserved that because some of their policies were equally crazy. And I was shocked to see some of the things that over the last 10 years or so that the Conservative government introduced, who are supposed to be supporting free enterprise and entrepreneurs. They certainly weren't doing it. In fact, it felt like a business owner, an entrepreneur, they were very much attacking us, and they were more like a Labour government anyway. But the Labour government they've got this landslide election, they can do whatever they want. And I'm just really concerned that some of the policies they come up with just seem very, very desperate. And what that means in all these times of uncertainty, a lot of people are frozen, not knowing what they are going to do. But that means there's an opportunity. When everyone else is sitting back, waiting just to see what happens, it's probably one of the best buying opportunities we've had. So whilst all this is very concerning, we don't know what's going to happen, actually, there's a window of opportunity. There's an opportunity for you right now to go out to find some people who need to sell their property, to come up with an ethical win-win solution that works for them and works for you, and to secure some great property deals. What's going to happen to property prices in the UK? Well, I don't know. And to be honest, I don't really care. Because as long as you find an investment that works today, that's in an area that's got strong rental demand, that makes positive cash flow, and you're planning to hold for the long term, and those are some of the rules from my book, Property Magic, well, it doesn't matter what happens short term to the property market. So my message to you now is, this is pretty shocking news. This is another insane policy from the Labour government. But you know what? Don't be distracted by this. See this as even more opportunity for you to get out right now, find some great deals, help some people who need to sell, and help provide much needed accommodation for the UK property market. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Come and comment below. What do you think's going on in the market? What's going to happen? What do you think about these new proposed tax changes? Like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to make sure you're notified anytime one of this new video comes out. Until next time, I encourage you as ever to invest with knowledge, invest with skill.